Welcome to Starbound. My name is Chikondi, and I'll be your narrator today. But before we get into today's story, please quickly check below to see if you've subscribed to the channel. It's 100% free, and it just helps make sure that our videos pop up in your feed more often. The massive Confederation exploration vessel Eternal Seeker hovered at the edge of the Sol system, its looming observation towers gleaming in the distant sunlight. Inside the central observatory, Senior Diplomatic Representative Zan Voss studied the holographic display of Earth with her compound eyes, antennae twitching with mild disdain.
"Another water world with dramatic temperature fluctuations," she chittered to her colleagues. "The inhabitants will be environmental fragiles, barely able to function outside their narrow comfort zones."
Quiltorax, the silicon-based engineer, extended a sinewy appendage through the hologram.
Class D at best. Their population centers cluster exclusively in moderate climate bands.
A subtle vibration emanated from the hovering metallic sphere that contained Zephyr 9, the gaseous Takazi's containment vessel emitting a brief puff of pale yellow vapor, their species' equivalent of dismissive laughter. "Yet they've achieved orbit with such biological limitations. Curious, if not particularly impressive." Zephyr 9's translated voice emerged. None of the three representatives found this surprising. In the 12,000-year history of the Galactic Confederation, they had encountered this pattern repeatedly. Biologically limited species clinging to narrow conditions, venturing into space only by dragging those same environments with them.
"The standard classification protocol is clear,"
Zan Voss concluded.
"Preliminary designation, Class D environmental dependence."
The classification wasn't merely academic. Within the Confederation's structure, a species classification determined everything from resource allocation to exploration rights. Class S species, those capable of surviving nearly any environment unaided, held the highest positions, while Class D species were viewed as evolutionary dead ends. Commander Looney Black floated in the observation module of the International Space Station, the Earth rotating majestically below. The stress lines around her eyes and her dark hair tied back in a regulation bun were the only outward signs of the immense pressure she felt. "Final checks complete on the environmental containment units," reported Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka, joining her at the window. "Methane concentrations for the Vrel representatives are stable. Pressure for the Kurin is holding. And we've successfully created a zero-G pocket for the Tazaki's containment sphere." Looney nodded, mentally reviewing the hundreds of modifications they'd made to the station. The ISS had been tripled in size, with new modules specifically designed for the diplomatic mission. "They're expecting primitives, Commander," Tanaka added. "Our atmospheric capabilities impress them, but they've made it clear they consider our space technology quaint." Looney felt a flash of indignation which she quickly suppressed.
"Then we'll have to exceed their expectations, Doctor. Humanity's future in the stars may depend on it."
The enhanced ISS now featured prototype gravity generators in certain sections, technology developed through unprecedented international cooperation after confirming alien existence. It might be experimental, but it represented humanity's finest engineering achievement to date. The docking bay gleamed with new metal and monitoring equipment as screens displayed the approaching alien shuttle. The craft's hull pulsated slightly, almost like breathing, as it perfectly aligned with the station's docking mechanisms. Commander Black stood at the front of the welcoming committee, Chief Engineer Lucas Wong and his team positioned strategically behind her. With a hydraulic hiss, the massive airlock doors slowly parted, revealing the three alien representatives in what humans recognized as their own version of spacesuits. Zan Voss stood at the front, her insectoid form encased in a segmented exoskeleton enhancement. Behind her transparent faceplate, compound eyes shifted rapidly, already scanning the station. Quill Thorax's shifting body was surrounded by a pressure regulation matrix that occasionally emitted brief flashes of light. Zephyr 9's containment sphere featured additional protective layers with small antenna-like protrusions that swiveled independently.
"Welcome aboard the International Space Station," Looney said formally. "We are honored to have representatives of the Galactic Confederation as our first extraterrestrial visitors."
Zan Voss immediately began scanning the station with a wrist-mounted device.
Your life support seems adequate, though primitively redundant.
Behind Looney, Lucas clenched his jaw slightly, but maintained his professional demeanor. Those redundancies represented humanity's hard-won wisdom about survival in space, lessons learned at the cost of lives. The station's conference room had been modified with various atmospheric sections separated by transparent barriers. Earth's continents slid into view through the window as the station orbited.
"We appreciate this opportunity to learn more about the Confederation's structure and humanity's potential role within it," Looney began. "We're particularly interested in understanding the classification system you've referenced."
The Galactic Classification System forms the foundation of Confederation structure,
Zan Voss explained.
Species are categorized by their adaptability to various environments, from Class S, those capable of surviving virtually any condition, to Class D, those requiring narrow environmental parameters.
"And where does humanity currently stand?"
Dr. Okafor asked.
Your species has developed impressive adaptations to your planetary conditions,
Zephyr 9 acknowledged.
However, humans must be categorized as Class D environmental dependents.
"Could you elaborate on the specific criteria?"
Looney asked, keeping her tone professionally neutral despite her rising indignation.
Class D species require constant environmental support to survive,
Quill Thorax explained.
Your temperature regulation is insufficient for vacuum exposure. Your oxygen dependencies are absolute, and your pressure requirements narrow.
Lucas leaned forward slightly.
But surely their ability to create technology that extends biological limits is itself an evolutionary advantage. Humans can't breathe underwater naturally, but we built submarines. We can't fly, but we built aircraft. We can't survive in vacuum, but you built containment vessels, Zephyr 9 interrupted. Impressive, but fundamentally different from evolved capability.
As the meeting concluded, Zephyr 9 changed the subject.
Your communication array appears to require what you call EVA operations. We would be interested in observing this process.
Looney exchanged a quick glance with Lucas, recognizing a diplomatic opportunity.
"We have a scheduled EVA tomorrow for routine maintenance. We'd be happy to allow observation."
Most educational,
Zan Voss agreed, antennae shifting forward in what indicated interest.
We are particularly curious about your containment vessel technologies for vacuum exposure.
Later, when the aliens had departed, Looney stayed behind with her senior staff.
"They seem fixated on our EVA capabilities," she noted. "Dr. Okafor, any insights?" "Their reaction to the mention of EVA operations was notable," the xenobiologist replied. "There's something about human vacuum survival technology that interests them beyond mere curiosity."
"Or concerns them," Lucas added. "They dismissed our technological adaptations, yet they're specifically interested in our spacesuits. There's a contradiction there."
"Either way," Looney said thoughtfully, "tomorrow's EVA demonstration just became our most important diplomatic tool. Let's make sure it's flawless."
Lieutenant James Zlen led his three-person team through the airlock, the white EVA suits gleaming in the unfiltered sunlight. Earth's blue curve dominated the background as they moved toward the communication array that required maintenance. Inside the observation module, the alien delegation watched with mild interest. Zephyr 9's sphere emitted pale green gas, indicating something between boredom and curiosity.
Your containment vessels seem bulky and inefficient,
Zan Voss remarked to Lucas, who monitored the EVA team's vitals on a nearby display.
The Vrel achieved much more streamlined design centuries ago.
Lucas bit back a defensive response. Our EVA suits maintain internal temperature in conditions ranging from negative 157 Celsius in the Earth's shadow to 121 Celsius in direct solar exposure. The cooling system uses a water sublimator that...
Primitive thermal transfer technology,
Quiltorax interrupted dismissively.
Fascinating from a historical perspective, I suppose.
Outside, Zlen's team worked methodically, their movements efficient after thousands of hours of training. Their suits' displays showed perfect life support parameters, oxygen levels, temperature regulation, and CO2 scrubbing all functioning optimally. In the control center, Looney stared at the flashing red indicators on the environmental systems display as Dr. Tanaka ran another diagnostic. The primary cooling system for the station's eastern quadrant was failing rapidly, with pressure building in multiple coolant loops.
We need to recall the EVA team immediately,
Looney decided, reaching for the communication panel,
and alert our guests to prepare for emergency protocols.
When informed, Jan Voss's antennae stiffened in alarm.
Your life support systems fail this frequently? How do your species survive in such precarious habitats?
Dr. Okafor noted the subtle shift in the aliens' postures, a newfound tension. Perhaps their environmental systems were designed with redundancies humans could only dream of.
Cooling system failures are rare, but critical when they occur,
Looney explained.
Without proper thermal regulation, sections of the station could reach temperatures that would damage equipment and potentially ignite materials stored in those areas.
The alien delegation exchanged their species equivalent of concerned glances. This wasn't part of their carefully planned assessment protocol. The temperature monitors in the affected sectors climbed steadily, approaching dangerous levels. In the alien quarters, the environmental systems began diverting power to compensate, causing instability in the specialized chambers. Warning sirens wailed as emergency containment procedures initiated. Quiltorax's form vibrated in distress as heat transferred through the station's structure into their temperature-sensitive chamber. Jan Voss clutched at breathing apparatus as environmental systems diverted power from atmospheric regulation. Outside, the EVA team received urgent instructions as Zlen's voice replied through the communication system. Station, EVA-1. We're accessing the external cooling manifold now. Preparing for emergency bypass procedure, but we'll need station power rerouted from non-essential systems.
Temperature exceeding safety parameters in sectors 7, 9, and 12,
reported a technician, voice tight with controlled urgency.
Automated fire suppression on standby. Environmental systems in diplomatic quarters operating at 64% efficiency and declining.
Zephyr 9's containment sphere pulsed with bright orange gas, their species' indication of alarm as they realized the delicate balance of their specialized environment was increasingly compromised by the station's struggling life support systems, which prioritized human habitability at the expense of their exotic requirements. Looney led a rescue team toward the diplomatic quarters, each member carrying specialized equipment for the different alien biologies. The corridor occasionally creaked as the station's structure strained.
We need to evacuate you to the emergency shelter,
Looney informed the aliens through the intercom.
Your environmental systems are failing faster than we can repair them.
Impossible!
Zan Voss's translated voice sounded strained.
Our biological requirements
can be temporarily supported,
Looney cut in firmly.
We have contingency protocols for this exact scenario.
Lucas felt a surge of vindication. Those primitively redundant systems now seemed like prudent engineering rather than technological backwardness. The emergency shelter was a reinforced module designed as a last resort, with limited but stable life support for up to 72 hours. Another example of human contingency planning the aliens had dismissed as unnecessary. Lieutenant Zlen assessed their situation from behind the relative protection of the main truss. His suit display showed 8.5 hours of primary life support remaining, with the emergency systems untouched. The temperature regulation system worked perfectly, despite the rapidly alternating sunlight and shadow.
Station, this is EVA-1, Zlen transmitted, his voice calm despite the circumstances. Primary return route compromised. We have full life support and all team members are uninjured.
Through the station windows, the alien delegation watched in stunned silence as the EVA team maneuvered confidently through the debris field, their suits showing no signs of distress despite direct exposure to vacuum and micrometeorite impacts. Quill thorax reflected the emergency lights in fractured patterns from their body, a physical manifestation of their shifting perspective. The silicon being had expected panic, deterioration, or at least signs of strain in these primitive containment vessels. Instead, they witnessed calm competence in conditions that would challenge even advanced Confederation environmental systems.
How long can they survive like that?
Zephyr 9 asked, their translated voice carrying unusual urgency. Lucas checked the readings before answering.
Standard EVA suits maintain full life support for 12 hours, with emergency protocols extending that to nearly 24 hours if necessary.
The three aliens exchanged glances of unmistakable surprise. Something about this information contradicted their core assumptions about human capabilities. For the first time since their arrival, the Confederation representatives began to consider that perhaps there was more to these Class D environmental dependents than their classification suggested. The emergency shelter hummed with active filtration systems as humans and aliens crowded together. Dr. Tanaka and Lucas worked frantically to stabilize the aliens' environmental conditions using modified equipment. Zephyr 9's containment sphere showed cracks, small wisps of their gaseous form occasionally escaping before being recaptured by emergency patches. Zan Voss breathed laboriously through a jury-rigged apparatus that approximated their methane requirements.
I don't understand.
Quill Thorax's harmonic voice wavered uncharacteristically.
Your EVA teams remain in vacuum, yet they show no distress. Our models indicate human biology should begin failing within minutes of direct space exposure.
Your models are wrong, Lucas stated plainly, adjusting a regulator. As already stated, the suits can maintain life for nearly an entire day if need be. The three aliens exchanged their species' equivalent of shocked glances, antenna twitches, and rapidly shifting gas colors.
Impossible!
Zan Voss chittered.
Such endurance would require thermal regulation capabilities beyond Class D technological development.
Looney checked the EVA team's vitals on a nearby display.
Lieutenant Zlen's team has been in vacuum for nearly 5 hours now. Their vital signs remain stable, internal suit temperature holding at 22 degrees Celsius despite cycling between shadow and direct sunlight.
Dr. Okafor observed with scientific fascination as the aliens processed this revelation, their entire classification system challenged by this simple demonstration of human engineering. In a makeshift workshop area within the emergency shelter, Lucas worked alongside Quill Thorax to stabilize the alien's damaged environmental regulator. Human and alien technology laid side by side showed stark differences in approach. The alien devices elegant but specialized, the human equipment modular and adaptable.
Your approach to thermal regulation is unexpected,
Quill Thorax admitted, their appendages delicately manipulating circuit pathways.
We developed frictionless heat transference centuries ago, but your liquid cooling systems are surprisingly effective in varied conditions.
Lucas detailed the history of spacesuit development. We designed for worst-case scenarios from the beginning. Our first astronauts faced temperature swings from negative 156 degrees Celsius in Earth's shadows to 121 degrees Celsius in direct sunlight. We had to develop systems that could handle both extremes with minimal power. The human suits used a layered approach. Vapor cooling garments next to the skin, multi-layer insulation to block radiant heat, and white external surfaces to reflect sunlight. Simple but extraordinarily effective across a wide range of conditions. Zan Voss, listening nearby, slowly understood that the Confederation's technological elegance came at the cost of adaptability. Their specialized environmental systems excelled in expected conditions, but failed catastrophically outside narrow parameters. Looney led a strategy session with her remaining command crew and the alien representatives. Lieutenant Zlen's vital signs transmitted steadily on a secondary display, showing all members in stable condition despite hours in vacuum.
We can reach the secondary airlock in Section 3, but we'll need to cut through the damaged research module, Zlen reported. Request permission to use thermal tools. Our suit supplies can handle the operation.
Such an operation would require precise thermal control in vacuum conditions.
Zephyr 9's translated voice emanated from their damaged sphere.
The temperature extremes would compromise most environmental systems we know.
Lieutenant Zlen's team can handle it,
Looney responded confidently.
Our EVA suits were designed for exactly this kind of contingency.
The thermal cutting tools would utilize directed plasma streams reaching temperatures exceeding 3,000 degrees Celsius. Yet the EVA suit's cooling systems could maintain internal temperatures within 2 degrees Celsius of optimal, even with this extreme external heat source. 18 hours into the crisis, Looney reviewed damage reports with increasing concern. Life support for the alien environments was failing faster than predicted, while structural integrity warnings flashed for multiple station sections.
Commander!
A technician called urgently.
Primary coolant loop failing in Section 8. Without it, we'll lose stability for the entire emergency shelter within 3 hours.
There is an alternative, Lucas said after a moment of heavy silence. We have 8 EVA suits in reserve. With modifications, they could temporarily support Zan Voss and Quiltorax. Zephyr 9's containment could be reinforced with salvaged components.
Impossible!
Zan Voss chittered anxiously.
Your simplistic containment vessels couldn't possibly...
With respect,
Looney interrupted firmly.
Those simplistic vessels have kept our EVA team alive for almost a full day in vacuum with no issues. They're still reporting optimal life support functions.
The realization slowly dawned on the alien delegation. Their survival now depended entirely on the human technology they had dismissed as inadequate. As Lucas began modifying the EVA suits, Zan Voss approached Looney privately. The Vrel's antennae drooped, indicative of concession.
Commander,
the alien diplomat began, mandibles moving slowly.
It appears the Confederation's assessment protocols have significant oversights.
How so?
Looney asked.
We categorize species by their inherent biological adaptability,
Jan Voss explained.
But we failed to properly account for technological adaptability as an evolutionary strategy itself.
Through the viewport, they watched as Lieutenant Zlen's team continued working methodically in the vacuum, their primitive suits protecting them flawlessly hour after hour.
Your EVA technology demonstrates adaptation capabilities that exceed many Class B species,
Jan Voss admitted.
The redundancies we dismissed as inefficient have proven essential to survival in crisis conditions.
Humans have always been tinkerers,
Looney replied.
We make do with what we have, improvise when necessary. It's how we survived on Earth before we reached space.
Jan Voss's antennae curved forward, a gesture denoting profound realization.
Perhaps the classification system itself is flawed. The progenitors who created it valued biological adaptation above all else, yet they themselves became extinct.
Jan Voss turned to face her colleagues.
I am formally recommending a full reclassification review for humanity upon our return, she announced. Their approach to environmental challenges may not fit our traditional metrics, but its effectiveness is undeniable.
The station's engineering bay, partially depressurized with emergency lighting casting long shadows across the equipment, buzzed with frantic activity. Occasional creaks from the station's strained superstructure provided an ominous backdrop to their work. Time was running out. Lucas led a team of engineers in modifying standard EVA suits to support alien biology. His face showed exhaustion but determination as he bent over a disassembled suit chestpiece, reconfiguring internal components with expertise. Dr. Okafor stood nearby, tablet in hand, providing biological parameters while Dr. Tanaka adapted materials to interface with alien physiologies. "Hand me the secondary regulator," Lucas called to a technician. "We need to reconfigure the entire intake system for methane processing." An EVA suit splayed open on the workbench revealed its complex inner workings. Layers of thermal regulation, pressure maintenance, oxygen generation, and waste processing. What had appeared to be a simple containment vessel to the aliens now displayed its true complexity, a marvel of engineering with systems upon systems, backups upon backups. "The thermoregulation system is the key," Lucas explained as he worked, fingers moving with surgeon-like precision through a tangle of coolant tubes. "It's designed to handle temperature differentials far more extreme than what we're facing now. In lunar orbit, we deal with shifts from negative 157 C in shadow to 121 C in direct sunlight, all while maintaining internal temperature within 1 degree Celsius of the set point." He connected a modified regulator, the system humming to life with a soft whir. "The liquid cooling ventilation garment handles the excess heat. Water circulates through tubes running across your body, absorbing heat directly from your skin. The pump in the backpack keeps it flowing, then transfers the warmed water to a heat exchanger that radiates the excess heat into space. Simple thermodynamics, but incredibly reliable." Quill Torax watched in fascination as the engineers adapted human technology on the fly. Their being's surface refracted the emergency lighting in complex patterns as they leaned closer to observe. "This modularity," the alien engineer noted, long appendages gesturing toward the reconfigured systems. "We would have designed entirely new systems instead of adapting existing ones. The inefficiency of altering functioning components would be considered inelegant." "Elegant doesn't always mean effective," Lucas replied without looking up from his work. "We rarely have the luxury of starting from scratch. We adapt, improvise, work with what we have. Sometimes constraints drive the best innovations." A young engineer handed Lucas a rewired sensor array. "These should interface with the Vrel respiratory system based on Dr. Okafor's specifications. The biometric sensors will adjust to their breathing patterns automatically." "Perfect," Lucas nodded, installing the component. "Run a diagnostic cycle while I finish the pressure tolerances for the Quarren suit." Across the bay, Dr. Tanaka worked with another team to reinforce Zephyr 9's damaged containment sphere. The elderly scientist's expertise in materials science proved invaluable as they adapted EVA suit components to create a more robust containment system. "Their original containment technology is impressive," Dr. Tanaka observed, examining a damaged section through a microscope. "But it's designed for optimal function under standard conditions with no redundancy. One failure point compromises the entire system." "Humans learned about redundancy the hard way," Lucas replied grimly. "When you're working in environments that can kill you in seconds, you don't get second chances. Every critical system needs backups, and those backups need backups." While waiting for the modified suits to be completed, Zephyr 9 floated near a small information terminal where Dr. Okafor had accessed historical records of human spaceflight. The Tazaki's containment sphere positioned itself before the screen, sensory appendages extended with apparent interest as images played in sequence. From Yuri Gagarin to the Apollo missions, the Space Shuttle program to early ISS construction. The display showed the evolution of spacesuits across decades, from the pressurized silver bodysuits of the first astronauts to the increasingly complex EVA systems developed for the moon landings and space station construction. Each generation built upon the lessons of the previous, addressing failures and incorporating new capabilities. Most striking were the images of disasters, the Apollo 1 fire, the Challenger and Columbia accidents, the early Mars mission decompression incident. After each catastrophe, the next generation of technology showed clear adaptations addressing the specific failure points.
Your species continued despite these failures?
Zephyr 9's translation came after viewing footage of the Challenger disaster.
Without perfect safety guarantees?
Especially because of the failures,
Dr. Okafor emphasized, scrolling to show the technological developments that followed each incident.
Each taught us something critical. We built redundancies into redundancies, escape systems into escape systems. We assumed failure was always possible and planned accordingly.
She brought up technical schematics showing how modern EVA suits incorporated lessons from dozens of near misses and actual disasters.
See this secondary oxygen system? It was implemented after the Langley incident in 2031. This emergency pressure maintenance protocol, developed after we lost 2 astronauts during the Lunar Gateway construction.
In Confederation engineering philosophy,
Zephyr 9's translated voice conveyed,
once a technology reaches 99.97% reliability, further redundancies are considered wasteful. Resources are better allocated to increasing efficiency within expected parameters.
That works fine until you encounter unexpected parameters, Dr. Okafor noted. Human space agencies adopted the philosophy that failure is not an option, not as a denial of reality, but as a commitment to exhaustive contingency planning, to have a backup for every backup, and emergency procedures for when all the backups fail.
She paused on an image of an early spacewalk.
We never assumed our technology was perfect. We assumed it would fail and designed accordingly.
Zephyr 9's containment sphere emitted a deep purple gas, a color unseen before, as they processed this key difference in approach. The Confederation had evolved beyond considering failure once certain technological thresholds were crossed, losing crucial adaptability in the process.
Perhaps,
the gaseous entity's translator conveyed after a long pause,
there is wisdom in expecting imperfection rather than the futile attempt to eliminate it.
At hour 26 after the crisis, the massive Confederation vessel Eternal Seeker arrived in Earth orbit. Its bronze sections caught sunlight in prismatic patterns as it approached the cluster of human escape pods that now harbored both humans and aliens in modified EVA suits. The station had been partially evacuated, with most personnel and the alien delegation now waiting in escape pods at a safe distance. Lieutenant Zlen's team remained aboard to complete critical repairs, still functioning effectively in their EVA suits after more than a day of continuous vacuum exposure. Inside the lead escape pod, Looney and the alien delegation monitored the approach on small display screens. The modified EVA suits continued functioning flawlessly, their status indicators showing green across all systems despite the extended use and improvised modifications.
Your environmental vessels have performed beyond all Confederation modeling parameters,
Zephyr 9 acknowledged, their gaseous form swirling vigorously within the adapted containment system, a sign of excitement and profound interest. Our preliminary simulations suggested they would begin failing after 12 hours at most.
Quiltorax's appendages gestured toward the status displays that monitored both the aliens' adapted suits and the EVA team still working on the station.
26 hours in vacuum conditions with multiple atmospheric compositions, pressure variances, and temperature extremes. No Confederation personnel protection system has demonstrated such versatility.
As the escape pods were drawn into the Confederation vessel's reception bay, a communication came through from Lieutenant Zlen's team, who had remained on the damaged station to complete critical repairs.
"Station to escape pods," Zlen's calm voice reported through occasional static. "Primary systems partially restored. We've been in continuous EVA for 21 hours now. Suits functioning at 92% efficiency up until hour 18, where it dropped progressively down to 86%. Still well within safety parameters. Request pickup at coordinates Alpha 73 once diplomatic party is secure." The aliens exchanged stunned glances. 21 hours in vacuum, far beyond what they had believed possible for primitive containment technology. More impressive still was the matter-of-fact in which Zlen delivered the report, as though such endurance was entirely routine.
In your experience,
Quiltorax asked Lucas as they prepared to board the alien vessel,
what is the longest a human has survived in one of these EVA suits?
During the Lunar Gateway crisis of 2039, Commander Nim, Lieutenant Zlen's mother actually, survived 17 hours in a suit similar to these older models, Lucas replied, checking the seal on Zephyr 9's improved containment system. That's when we implemented the triple redundancy protocols that are standard now. As they prepared to board the alien vessel, Jan Voss moved to the communication panel and made a formal transmission to the Confederation Council. Her mandibles moved in the precise ritual patterns that indicate a formal invocation of rarely used protocols.
I, Senior Representative Zan Voss, hereby invoke Protocol 87 Alpha, classification reassessment on basis of exceptional demonstration.
Her translator relayed the precise ceremonial phrasing.
The species designated human has demonstrated adaptive capabilities significantly exceeding their current classification metrics.
Looney looked to Dr. Okafor questioningly. Dr. Okafor had spent the last 3 years studying the Confederation's legal and bureaucratic procedures from the limited archives they'd shared during first contact. Late nights poring over translated diplomatic texts had revealed this obscure protocol, mentioned only in footnotes of species interaction guidelines. She'd documented it in her research, but never imagined seeing it invoked firsthand. The pattern of mandible movements and the specific cadence of Zan Voss's speech matched exactly what the archives had described as the formal challenge ceremony.
It's their formal process for challenging a species classification,
the xenobiologist whispered excitedly.
It's only been successfully invoked 3 times in Confederation history.
3 weeks after the space station crisis, Commander Looney Black and Chief Engineer Lucas Wong stood in the Grand Examination Chamber aboard the Eternal Seeker. The vast room buzzed with energy as hovering diagnostic platforms surrounded a display pedestal where a standard human EVA suit was mounted. High Arbiter Savax, a leathery reptilian with ceremonial scarification denoting rank, studied the holographic readouts of the suit's performance data. The dignitary's scaled tail twitched occasionally, a sign of intense concentration among their species. Quiltorax's form pulsed with rhythmic frequency, commenting,
"Most remarkably, when modified under crisis conditions with minimal resources, these suits successfully supported 3 entirely different alien biologies. No environmental protection system in the Confederation archive demonstrates comparable versatility."
Science Director Ith Malar, an aquatic species with translucent skin revealing a complex circulatory system, raised an objection.
While the performance is impressive, the classification system specifically measures inherent biological adaptability, not technological compensation.
That distinction, Zephyr 9 countered, their containment sphere now featuring improvements inspired by human EVA technology, may represent a critical flaw in our system. Is the capacity to conceptualize, create, and adapt not itself a biological trait? The chamber filled with the equivalent of murmurs from a dozen different species. Some communicated through light patterns, others through pheromones or subtle gravitational fluctuations.
The proposal to reclassify humans is unprecedented,
rumbled Elder Kralik, his exoskeleton vibrating with tones of skepticism.
A mere Class D species achieving space travel through technological means rather than inherent biological capability should not qualify for Class B status.
Yet their solution to the radiation issue demonstrates adaptation at a rate previously unseen,
countered Representative Zenda, her luminescent appendages flashing in patterns indicating strong conviction.
17 cycles to develop a breakthrough that our projections indicated would require at least 70.
A cloud of shimmering particulates formed in the center of the chamber as the Mist Collective joined the debate.
Classification is not merely about current capabilities, but evolutionary potential. Humans lack telepathy, biological transmutation, or quantum sensing. These deficiencies must be considered.
Dr. Okafor leaned toward Looney, whispering,
The Mist Collective has opposed every reclassification in the past. They believe biological evolution is the only valid pathway.
Their technology is not evolving, their minds are,
interjected Jan Voss, her mandibles clicking rhythmically.
We witness direct neural adaptation to technological challenges. They don't simply create tools. They alter their cognitive patterns to conceive solutions beyond their evolutionary heritage. The progenitors who established our classification system,
Zan Voss noted,
went extinct despite their Class S biological adaptability. Perhaps they undervalued technological adaptability as an evolutionary strategy.
A compelling observation,
acknowledged High Counselor Vrital, whose species had evolved in the crushing depths of a gas giant.
The progenitors perhaps failed to recognize that consciousness itself is an adaptive mechanism, not merely the biological substrates supporting it.
Looney stepped forward when invited to speak.
Humans evolved on a planet with wildly varying environments. Rather than developing specialized biological adaptations for each climate, we developed the capacity to create tools that allowed us to adapt to any environment. Our spacesuits represent the culmination of that strategy.
Yet tools can be lost, knowledge forgotten,
challenged the Mist Collective.
Biological adaptations are encoded genetically, persistent across generations without conscious effort.
With respect, Looney countered, humans have developed multiple systems for preserving and transmitting knowledge across generations. Our technological evolution has become self-sustaining and accelerating, functioning as a form of external DNA. The knowledge to create our solutions persists independently of any individual.
Savax, the eldest member of the council whose species had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations across 500,000 years, raised 4 limbs in the gesture that called for decision.
The Council has deliberated and reached consensus. Human classification shall be revised to Class B, with a unique sub-designation recognizing technological adaptation as their specialized evolutionary strategy.
It wasn't a complete victory. Humans weren't being classified as Class A or S, but it represented an unprecedented 4-level increase and formal recognition of humanity's unique approach to survival. 6 months later, the International Space Station had been rebuilt and expanded with Confederation assistance. The new diplomatic wing now hosted representatives from 12 different species, all studying human engineering principles. Lucas led a delegation of alien engineers through the station's EVA preparation area.
The key insight from the crisis was the value of modular systems, he explained. Rather than creating perfectly specialized environmental protection for each scenario, we designed components that can be reconfigured based on circumstances.
Quill Torax, now the official Quarren ambassador to Earth, extended a thin appendage toward a disassembled suit component.
We have begun implementing similar principles in our own designs. The matrices now incorporate modular nodes rather than fixed configurations.
In the station's new research laboratory, Dr. Okafor worked alongside Zephyr 9, who had remained as a scientific liaison. Together, they were developing an entirely new type of environmental protection system that combined the best aspects of human redundancy with Confederation elegance.
The most valuable outcome,
Zephyr 9's translator conveyed as they manipulated a prototype containment field,
has been the paradigm shift within Confederation scientific philosophy. The recognition that different evolutionary strategies can produce equally valid approaches to survival has sparked a renaissance in cross-species collaboration.
1 year after the crisis, a joint human Confederation expedition prepared to explore an extreme environment previously considered too hostile for biological entities. The team would use enhanced suits based on human designs, but incorporating alien materials and concepts. Commander Looney Black, now serving as humanity's first ambassador to the Confederation High Council, gave the expedition's departure address from the newly constructed Earth Embassy on the Confederation homeworld.
Today, we embark together to explore environments that none of our species could survive in naturally.
She gestured toward the displayed image of the expedition's modified EVA suits, human in basic design, but transformed by Confederation materials and insights.
These suits represent more than mere technology. They embody a new understanding of adaptation itself, not as the biological capacity to withstand hostile environments unaided, but as the intelligence to recognize our limitations and engineer solutions that transcend them.
Zan Voss, now elevated to the Confederation's Adaptation Council, raised her limbs in profound agreement.
We thought humans would freeze in space,
the Vrel representative chittered,
until we saw their spacesuits. And in seeing them, we learned that survival takes many forms. Some evolved over millions of years within bodies, others crafted by hands and minds in mere centuries.
In the station's makeshift preparation area, Zan Voss hesitantly allowed technicians to help her into the adapted EVA suit. The Vrel diplomat's insectoid limbs were carefully guided into modified openings, her compound eyes reflecting concern through the adjusted helmet's transparent faceplate. The modified suit looked jury-rigged but functional. Standard human components reconfigured with visible alterations where alien biology required different support systems. Additional tanks and regulators attached to provide the methane atmosphere Zan Voss required. The outer layer showed emergency repairs and patches where components had been salvaged from damaged suits.
It looks unstable,
Zan Voss's translator conveyed her apprehension.
Appearances can be deceiving, Lucas replied, running final system checks. This doesn't have the aesthetic integration of your Confederation technology, but every system is functional and triple verified.
He made final adjustments to the environmental controls, the suit's diagnostic panel illuminating with green status indicators. The internal environment will stabilize once the system calibrates to your biology, he explained. The suit's AI will continuously adjust to maintain optimal conditions. It's designed to learn and adapt to user needs.
And if it fails?
Zan Voss' translated voice carried unmistakable anxiety. Triple redundant systems. Lucas pointed to separate control units visible through the suit's access panel. If primary systems fail, secondary activates automatically. If secondary fails, manual systems can be activated with these controls. If all else fails, we have Emergency Protocol Charlie.
What is Emergency Protocol Charlie?
Zan Voss asked, mandibles moving rapidly behind the faceplate. We put you in another suit, Lucas said with a slight smile. We brought extras. As the helmet sealed with a soft hiss, Zan Voss's antennae twitched with initial distress before gradually relaxing as the suit's environmental systems adjusted precisely to her biology. Status indicators on the exterior display showed metabolic functions stabilizing as the internal atmosphere reached optimal methane concentration.
How do you feel?
Dr. Okafor asked, monitoring the biotelemetry readings.
It is surprisingly comfortable,
Zan Voss admitted, her translated voice now coming through the suit's communication system.
The internal environment is nearly identical to my specialized chamber, despite this being adapted from human specifications.
For the first time, Zan Voss felt something approaching respect for the supposedly primitive human approach. They had planned for failure at every level instead of assuming technological perfection. Nearby, Quiltorax was being fitted into their modified suit, the reinforced structure accommodating the being's unique physiology. The silicon-based aliens' normally confident demeanor showed signs of uncertainty as they surrendered their safety to human technology. The pressure will stabilize at 7.2 atmospheres, Lucas assured them. The reinforced structure can withstand up to 12 atmospheres before compromising, well beyond your needs even in an emergency situation. As the modified EVA suits were completed and the last of the alien diplomats were secured inside human technology, the station gave another ominous groan. The evacuation pods were ready, a testament to human ingenuity under pressure. What had begun as a diplomatic crisis had transformed into something more profound, an exchange of philosophies. For the alien species, something deeper had shifted. They had glimpsed a truth that had guided humanity's survival through countless disasters. Perfection was never the goal. Adaptability was.